On a cold November day in 1920, Dublin was shook by the worst single day of violence of the Irish War of Independence. Assassinations and a massacre at the home of the GAA, Croke Park, became known as Bloody Sunday, one of the darkest days in Irish history. Bloody Sunday took place in the midst of the Irish War of Independence, which had begun exactly 1 year and 10 months prior, on January 21st, 1919. On this day, Dáil Éireann was founded, following a landslide victory for Sinn Féin, Ireland's leading independence party in the 1918 general election. It was established to act as a native parliament replacing British rule and governing the nation independently. The first Dáil declared Ireland's independence, and this became a symbolic act of defiance against British rule, occurring the same day as the first shots of the Irish War of Independence by Irish volunteers. However, it was not authorised by the Irish volunteer leadership or the newly formed Dáil Éireann. Over the next year and 10 months, sporadic episodes of violence evolved into a structured guerrilla war campaign under leaders like Michael Collins. To combat this, Britain reinforced Ireland with paramilitary police, known as the Auxiliaries and the Black and Tans. By 1920, the conflict had escalated significantly, assassinations and reprisals had intensified, and British intelligence officers were operating in Dublin to suppress the IRA. Michael Collins had also founded the Squad, an IRA counter-intelligence unit tasked with targeting British intelligence agents. This intelligence battle in Dublin directly led to the events of Bloody Sunday. At 9 a.m. on November 21st, 1920, the events of Bloody Sunday began to unfold. Within half an hour, a series of assassinations of British intelligence officers were carried out by the Squad, most taking place in Dublin's south inner city, with a further mistaken identity killing taking place on the north side on Sackville Street. 14 people were assassinated on the morning of the 21st, with Colonel Montgomery the last to succumb to his wounds over 2 weeks later, bringing the total number to 15. By midday, and the time of the upcoming Dublin Tipperary football match in Croke Park, news of the violence had reached the British administration at Dublin Castle and GAA Secretary Luke O'Toole. By the time the possibility of the British response to the game was passed around, a large crowd of around 5,000 had already gathered, and officials felt a sudden cancellation of the game would cause mass panic and a potential crowd crush. It is reasonable to suggest that the GAA did not anticipate such a deadly attack on civilians at a sporting event. The match began at 3:15 p.m. Meanwhile, armed British troops were approaching the stadium. Upon entering the ground, they opened fire on the crowd of spectators. There was confusion and panic as spectators and players rushed to the exit gates, causing a stampede. After about 90 seconds of sustained fire, 9 people lay unresponsive, with a further 5 succumbing to injuries sustained during the shooting, bringing the total to 14 who would lose their lives due to the massacre in Croke Park. Among them was Tipperary footballer Michael Hogan. Today, the West Stand of Croke Park is named in his honour. The events of Bloody Sunday led to more mutual distrust and hardened attitude on both sides. The conflict escalated further with sophisticated ambushes, often followed by brutal reprisals. The War of Independence would continue into 1921 until a truce was finally agreed that July.